Chat, what it do? We're back at it again with another, I guess, J-Craft review. I gotta really come up with a name for these reviews. I mean, it's just a playthrough review of the games I've been playing on my YouTube channel. Some of y'all been watching along. You saw the game that we're reviewing now, the Night Cleaner. The 2 episodes dropped earlier in the week. I had a lot of good feedback from those. So, I'll go over a little bit briefly over my system, but I'm not going to go in detail of what each category is because I've gone over them a lot in detail in previous videos. I feel like they're pretty explanatory. So just keep in mind too, though, the Night Cleaner was a short burst horror game. With my system, it rewards games that have a lot of thought into it, that have been around for a while, that have a lot of flavor to them. And this game was purely meant for streaming entertainment purposes, but I wanted to make content out of it and see how it fared. And still, I had a lot of fun doing it. So, just keep that in mind when we get through the, start dissecting the review here. So for the categories, we got gameplay and mechanics. And we got the story and atmosphere, sound design and music, the visual level and design. And then lastly, we have the replayability. So keep that in mind as we get on through here. Let me go ahead and start off with the first one here. Gameplay and mechanics. So I have a few, like my notes on this are really, really short. So this video is going to be not as well thought out as, Super Normal or Fear, just because this game was so short burst, it was pretty easy to get my own feel for it. Now, surprisingly enough, the gameplay and mechanics scored really, really well. I actually ended up giving this category 17 points. And reason being is because when you think of gameplay and mechanics, you think of like how smooth the game is it choppy? And honestly, overall, this game felt really, really smooth. There was no issues I had with it. It was very aesthetically pleasing when it came to the tasks that were given to me. And even during like the chase scenes, really didn't have any issue, no glitching or any sort of that nature. And honestly, the controls felt really, really well done. I mean, it was a very simplistic game, so the controls, you really can hurt yourself going too hard on them. Yeah, you would think too, like, with how this game looks and feels, you'd be like, well, how come you didn't think you scored a higher score? I mean, 17 is still pretty high, but, why did you dock 3 points from it? Well, the only reason is for the actual gameplay itself. For like a first or second time playthrough, it would have been really, really well done. But, past that, the jump scares were very, very minimal in this game. I think we actually got more audio creepy sounds than we did actual jump. I think there's like maybe 3 or 4 jump scares in this game. So again, it really does hit heavy on the, if you're a streamer and you're looking to make content out of a short burst horror video game, this is a great game to use. It takes probably, I don't know, probably an hour. It took me like an hour and a half because I got hung up trying to complete one level. But yeah, other than that, everything was really well thought out and really well done. So, all right, now let's get into the second grading criteria, story and atmosphere. And you guys, if you've been watching my videos, this is my favorite category. That and sound are my 2 that I look for the most when it comes to a game. So the story was pretty well thought out. Actually, yeah, the story was really well put together. The build-up was very solid. The build-up was good. The horror elements were definitely there. Like I mentioned in gameplay and mechanics, they weren't as frequently as I had hoped. The only thing, and I'll lead with this too, that the story and atmosphere category ended up getting 15 points. And, the reason for the 5-point deduction was something that I think really makes or breaks a game is environmental storytelling. It's an aspect that a lot of, I feel like, game devs, I would say, well, probably majority kind of lack in, especially for these kind of games. Games like Silent Hill or Resident Evil or even Fear, they take the effort to include environmental storytelling. And when I say environmental storytelling, what I mean exactly is, you know, the characters progressing through the story, and there's little things left throughout the level or the mission or the game that adds supporting lore to the game. So that way it encourages the player to not just go from objective A to objective B. It actually encourages them to want to explore the game if they want to understand the story better. And it's kind of conflicting with this game because I'll get into it at the end. You know, surprise, we don't have any facts for this one. We actually have fan theories, and that was the intention of the game dev, was to leave enough of the story to where the community could figure out their own ideas as to why things are happening the way they are, which is a good tactic. But, you know, with the way that environmental storytelling sets up, you could still include that and also still leave it up to the community. I didn't see really any environmental storytelling in the game. I mean, I think into it, the only thing really, maybe the interaction with the creepy employee, but that really wasn't much more than a stream jump scare. And then the lockbox that was in the boss's office. Other than that, everything was pretty straightforward. There was really not much to go off of from that. So, you know, ultimately that ended with 15 points, which isn't terrible. But without further ado, let's get into the next category: sound design and music. So, you know, one thing I like doing with these playthroughs is I'll mute my original gameplay and I'll put, like, you know, some background track, because I did think about it and I'd have to separate my audio from the original game and keep the original gameplay, and it was a lot of hurdles. So if you really want to go into the game to understand my scoring for the sound, then you can watch my playthrough on my YouTube. But ultimately with sound design, I ended up giving it 10 points, which was I believe, yeah, it was the lowest score. And, you know, again, anyone that knows me, they know I'm very critical of the sound. I love good sound in a game. That's what makes me feel immersed. So this game had potential, had me hooked at the beginning, but then as I started playing the game a little bit more, things started falling through the cracks. So, you know, right off the bat, I got hung up on a level. You know, I wanted to max out the game to get the Steam achievement. And so I spent like 20 minutes trying to find whatever trash it was, and I actually couldn't find it. So maybe if you find it on the playthrough, let me know in the comments. But in doing that, it made me realize that these eerie sounds that I was hearing the whole entire time that I was playing the game, it was almost like on a loop. It became really repetitive to the point to where I almost expected it. And, you know, I get that, you know, with any game that you play it over and over again, that you're going to have that amount of repetition. But again, I was maybe 30, 40 minutes into this game, and I was already almost numb to the background sound, to where it was kind of killing the immersion, because it was non-stop and it almost felt like it was on a loop. So that really affected the sound design for me. Another thing that was a huge just kind of hit to the gut for me playing the game was during the chase scene, out of nowhere there was some random heavenly music playing in the background, which it really made no sense to have in a chase scene. Unless, you know, I could be absolutely wrong, and if there was, you know, some type of hidden message in the fact that we were getting this random heavenly music, which could tie into my personal fan theory, then I'll flip the script, I'll flip the score. But, you know, just going off initial first playthrough, you know, I was really kind of taken aback. I'm like, I'm supposed to be scared. Why am I here and I'm being called to the pearly gates? And the other thing too, that, you know, this is one of the things I was talking about with these short burst horror games is going to suffer for. There wasn't any voice acting, which is good for streamable content because you can kind of get into it and narrate a little bit. But we like games with really good voice actors. You know, that's a very niche pocket of the acting community that people take near and dear to their heart. And so, as long as it's not AI voices, it's something that a lot of gamers really appreciate. And this game didn't have any of it. And it sucks because, you know, there are great games out there that just don't have voice acting, and they're still amazing games. But, you know, it's something, like I've always said, I have to create a standard for all games across the board. So this is the most standardized grading system I could come up with. And sadly, you know, this game ended up suffering because of it. And you know, I just want to, you really got to go and watch my playthrough, because the vacuum was the absolute goat of the video game. The sound it makes when it turns on was just chef's kiss. It was so nice to hear a pleasant little tune while you're literally in a haunted office building, not knowing if you're going to make it out, right? But yeah, you know, ultimately ended sound design with 10 points. And with that, we'll be getting into visual and level design. So I'm going to start off the gate here with visual and level design. I ended up giving it 15 points. Which, you know, for me, the standard that I have, you know, out of 20 points for each category, 15 is pretty much, you know, like meeting expectations, not really exceeding it, but not really failing it either. Just in the way that my grading system internally works, right? The levels were really clean. I really liked this VHS design over the whole entire game. It was different, it was unique, and I really enjoyed it. I know it's not really made for everyone, but that's why, you know, every review is different in that way, in that regard, right? There are 4 endings in this game too, which also will tie into the next category. But even having said that, you know, the big limiting factor to this is that when you think of level design, you think about each level that's being designed uniquely or creatively. You know, if you watch my Fear review, Fear's level designs were really well thought out. They were very unique. There were certain missions that just resonated with you when you finished the game. This one, it was really straightforward. You know, it's just levels to a building, right? But they were still really cool. You know, outside was amazing, given the fact that thunderstorms were literally banging in your eardrum, but it was really, really unique and immersible. And, you know, I can't give negative points on the level design, because that would mean that the levels were poorly done. You know, I was getting lost somewhere or struggling to find the next area to go to. But again, it's very straightforward. I mean, you really can't go wrong with this game for level design. So, you know, and even this is why I kind of wish that the environmental storytelling was there, because the environmental detail, especially for outside, was immaculate. But it just felt like it was just flavor text. There was no actual detail upon further of that. I mean, you got more detail in what was in your fridge and in the kitchen than you were in the actual building itself. I mean, you could only really interact with your cleaning equipment in the trash can and the lockbox in the boss's room. So, you know, having said that, I ended up giving visual and level design 15 points. And I guess we're going to get into replayability. Last category, replayability. I'm going to already open up the gate with the score. I ended up giving it an 11. Now, again, these short burst horror games are not going to score well in this category, because they're meant to be played like a one-off to stream, to make content out of, reaction content. Me personally, I would play this game again after a set amount of time, you know, like a Halloween stream, or, you know, just 6 months to a year after, to where like it's fresh, or, you know, whenever that is, you know, that I just feel fresh to try it again. Even having said that, though, if I wanted to play it tomorrow, I could, because like I said, there's 4 endings in this game. I got the one bad ending, and normally I can find through the internet like the different endings and how to get them. And this game really isn't like super normal, you know, where it was kind of straightforward on what people said to do this, do this, do this. And so that's good. That means that there's a certain level of difficulty on getting these endings. Now, the overall difficulty to the game wasn't that terribly difficult. The chase scene got me a little bit at first, because I didn't understand I could knock down things. I just thought it was a dead end, and I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm cooked. And I tried it again, and the other way, also cooked. And then I tried it a third time going my original way, and I was like, maybe I can just run through this wall. And I did, and I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, you know, I personally enjoyed this game. You know, it's going to be really hard for me not to enjoy a horror game. It's going to have to be royally just absolute dog water for me not to want to play it and not recommend it to people. I'm a pretty non-critical person, which is why these reviews are kind of putting me out of my comfort zone. I like doing them, but it's also interesting to me because, you know, I'm not really a critical person. I'm usually I'll try anything at least once, you know? And so I definitely would play this game again. I would say, you know, if you want to play this game, I would catch it on sale. Maybe Steam's Halloween sale, and use it as a Halloween game to stream to your viewers. You know, it's a little bit of a dry run at first, but there's a lot of awkward interactions that make it fun for your audience. And there's like, you know, 2 or 3 jump scares in the game. And I will say, the one jump scare that you probably saw earlier with me going to the elevator and that lady just popping up next to me, that was probably top 5, like one of my worst jump scares I've ever had recorded. So that was cool. You know, that's something unique to this game so far. You know, I've kind of just started my horror gaming journey. So, yeah, I guess, you know, with that being said, replayability having 11, let's just go ahead and roll on into the total score. And then after that, we'll go into the last of fun facts and everything like that. But yeah, so if you've done the math, you can kind of tell this game got a 68%, which is the lowest score I've given so far, but it could be the highest score for these short burst horror games. I might have to break them out into categories, but then that might get a little too complex. I didn't expect this game to score that well just because, you know, it was really made for making content. I mean, it's the way it felt initially playing it. You know, the story was kind of there, but not really. And there wasn't really, you know, any form of customization or level gain to want to increase the player wanting to play the game more. It was more like, here's the game, here's some endings you can go through. And then once you get those endings, you know, thanks for playing the game, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you know, with the way my system is, it's not really going to score that well, which is fine. You know, like I said, I'm really not a critical person. That's why I want to really hit the heavy note of, if I ever do say, hey, this game sucks, don't get it, you best believe, you know, don't get this game. But I mean, this game wasn't that bad. I enjoyed it. You know, there was a lot of funny interactions. The chase scene was good. And I'll get into like why I truly love this game in the next section, but it wasn't really that terrible. So I know 68%, you're like, wow, that's a pretty awful score, but you got to think about what this game is, you know? It kind of makes sense that the score came out to what it did, right? So just keep that in mind next time you see around it. You know, if it's on sale, just go, oh, hey, maybe I'll try this game for a quick little cheeky stream or whatnot. Yeah, you know, with that being said, let's roll into the next category, fun facts. All right, fun fact. There is no fun facts. This game is so small, or I guess, you know, whatever reason it may be, there really isn't any cool facts I can find about the game. What I did find, though, was even cooler, which is fan theories. So I'll go over the ones that the community believes. And this is the big reason why I love this game, is that it leaves a lot up to the viewer to figure out. Like I said, you know, this helped a lot with the story and atmosphere category. I just wish there was a little bit more environmental detail to kind of get the brain, you know, jogging a little bit more. But still, you know, let's get into the first one. The first one is, let's see here. The theory goes, what if you were a part of an organization that cleans up this kind of thing? The reason being is because after the first day, your character does not think to call authorities, but rather continues to do their job, which is crazy. Because I even thought about that too while I was playing. You know, he's like, you know, oh, I don't want to go into this job. And I'm like, don't, I wouldn't. Like, you literally got scared by some chick in an elevator, woke up in your apartment, and your first thought was, I got to get to work. Like, no, I would not. I would be staying home, calling a sick day, going to my parents' house. Like, what? You know, that was not normal behavior. So that's a very valid theory. I don't know about, because the theory is that you're cleaning up the messes from this spirit that's in the building. My only thing though is like the way the character reacts, saying, you know, hey, I don't want to go back, but I got to, it's my job. That's not logical. But also, like, if you did work for this organization, wouldn't you be like, you know, oh, this is a tough cleanup or something, or, you know, I need backup, you know, it's, I guess that's the beauty of fan theories, right? There's going to be little holes, but the majority of it's going to make sense. So, you know, that one was pretty interesting to read on. The other theory is that it's all in your head. This one, I feel like it's kind of a cop out. A lot of games you could make that theory. I mean, look at the show. Actually, no, I'm not going to spoil that, but there are shows that do that, you know, where it's all in your head. But yeah, you know, I could see the argument that's made there. Sure. You know, it's like the age old thing of you wake up and it was all a dream. And it's like, really? Like, feels lazy, but, you know, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, you know. My theory, and I kind of came up with this right here at this point, right? When you had the red building and the characters going, you know, I'm going to have to do this over and over again, and there's no escape. Oh, woe is me, woe is me. But, you know, like I mentioned, I actually had to rewind it a bit because I was getting close to the end of my video because I'm yapping too much. I just love lore. Yeah, so that point that I had mentioned, right? That's where it kind of dawned on me that what if this is some form of purgatory, right? For whatever reason, our character is committed either some kind of sin or is awaiting judgment to go to their final resting place. And this created domain is custom to their livelihood, their life, of what they've centered around their, you know, desires and wants. Because you see how, like, you have the freedom of choice to hand a fruit to the old man out in the it's an achievement, you can choose to do that or not. And I didn't even know what you could. I was like, wait a minute, like, let me see if I can get something from my kitchen to give to this guy. It makes sense, especially when he's like, you know, it's an endless loop that I can't get out of. That's my theory on it. That's what makes the most sense to me. If you've watched my playthrough, played this video, watched someone else play it, and you know a little bit of how the game operates, let me know now down below what you think your fan theory is. I'd love to hear them. I'm always down for lore theories, fan theories, the whole 9 yards. So that's my big selling point, why this game still has, you know, a foot in the door, is that I love games that leave you on a cliffhanger and where it's up to the community to figure out. And you ask the game dev, well, hey, you know, what is this place? And the game dev says, that's up to you guys. You know, I love that. I think that's cool to create something like that and leave it up to your community to spin it and make their own adaptation to it. So that's really cool. So all in all, you know, not a bad game. Definitely a short playthrough, but hey, you know, that's not a bad thing. I definitely enjoyed playing this game. And if you aren't following or subscribing, go ahead and do that now, because I'll be having next playthrough already lined up. What is it, you may ask? I don't know. I have about like 10 games lined up that I just kind of pick on what I think would be a good game to kind of show you guys. So it'll be a surprise. So just keep an eye on it. I think probably maybe next week or the week after that'll be coming out. But thank you all for coming in to watch the review, watching the playthroughs. I really enjoyed the support. Thank you all for watching, you know, the YouTube shorts, the love and support. And you know, if there's any critiques I can do for these reviews, let me know. I try to keep them as standardized and semi-short and, you know, organized as I can be. So I appreciate everything that you guys do and keep me on my toes. So without further ado, I'll be seeing you.